I'm gonna need to get some feedback in the comment section from some black women um on this topic, because I'm gonna really explore this whole concept of black people lacking value in each other. um I think that self-hatred is it's an overused term. I would say that there's a lot of things that are rooted in self-hatred or overall inferiority complex that surrounds blackness. But the way that many women try to throw around self-hate, it just it doesn't apply. It's like almost like how you can love someone without being in love with them. You know what I mean? Like things can be rooted in self-hate without you personally being self-hating, right? If that makes any sense, right? So Cabin Solo and myself, we've been going back and forth and back and forth, really trying to break this down. I mean, I had a video that I made, and he responded to one of the videos that I posted. I mean, especially the one about Dennis and black women and are they worse? And if they would look better, black men would tolerate their attitudes more, because this is what Dennis was saying. And Cap responded one way, then he went back and listened to my video in its entirety, and then he was saying he was going to go and listen to Dennis, but then we just kind of like fast forward and talked about it. And what came out of that, and I have another video I didn't post, but I was going to, dive in and post it and point out some things about how things change. But again, it just, in summary, it just came down to the fact that it's not that black women are any different than they were before. It's the fact that you have this whole expanded light skin universe, and you have the fact that many other groups have improved. They're working out now, they're going to the gym, and so that's what a lot of brothers are comparing black women to. And they look at these other women and they appreciate them working out and their level of fitness. I mean, it's a whole different generation. So we talked about that, and then he sent me the video from the, what's her name, Ches Charday or something like that. I don't know why I can't remember her name, but anyway, and he wanted me to focus on the value part. I kind of focused on the Kevin Samuels, what she was saying about respecting your elders, and we've talked about that ad nauseum, about how that's dead in the black community. That no longer exists. There's a lot of older black folks that keep coming online and they keep talking about this, and back in my day, and the respect elder, all that intrinsic respect. You do not get intrinsic respect anymore. Young black people, operate on the anybody can get it principle. I talked about this in my last video. Again, they're not dependent on you for your survival. You can't dish out punishment or reward. If some black youth walks up and smacks their elder, what's going to happen? You're not going to be able to deny them economic opportunities that you don't operate in control, and you're not passing out and dishing out, right? You can't withdraw what you didn't put out to begin with. And then on top of that, it just looks pathetically weak when you have black elders who basically go to another race of men to handle their problem. Oh, we got problem with our young black youth. Oh, please, white man, come in here and handle our young black youth, because we can't handle them, because we've lost total control. And a lot of the stuff changed. And the best scene that highlights it is that scene in Straight Outta Compton. When those gangbangers, when that kid was throwing up the gang signs on the bus, and they swerved in front of the bus. You know what I mean? And they were like, pull this sucker over, right? And they get on the bus, and then they do whatever they're gonna do. That didn't go down in the 50s and the 60s. It just wasn't gonna go down like that. But once you had these young men, they got muscle, they got guns, And again, the black elders, took the approach that, oh, well, we need is gun control and we're not going to address the economic issues. And, the young people are out here. They're not kissing white people's ass. They're not trying to be accepted by white people to that degree. They've created a subculture based on prolonged exposure to poverty and lack of resources. And, in large part because they saw the black elders go out there and, kiss white people's ass and they ain't got nothing to show for it. So the young people have a completely, different approach. You know what I'm saying? Like, I am not my ancestors. I was listening to some Cudham Reese track, and he got right in the track. He's like, I'm not going to run away like my father, in his new mixtape album. I was like, damn. You know what I mean? And he's just talking about, using the analogy of his father running away from, his house in terms of him not running away in no matter what he gets into in these streets. Right. So, you end up with this, I am not my ancestor. Like, anybody can get it. Shit is going to go down. And if I die in the process, so be it. That's the type of energy that young people are coming with. I mean, you see this with, all that, oh, we going to march in the streets and everything else. I don't necessarily agree with it per se, but I got to respect the energy, which is, we going to show up. We going to dox them. We going to show up at their house. We going to make things real uncomfortable for them. Now, like I said, I don't think that that white people aren't going to be a response. I think black people, they underestimate, white rage or white resentment. And they think that, they're just going to show up and scream in microphones. And I'm like, one of these white boys is going to get the dumping. So I'm like, y'all keep playing chicken on the highway. And, some of them, they don't play that. But again, you have this whole aspect of, many of them have something to lose, and they don't want to lose all that, so they don't want to be bothered, but they hate the fact that they have that sort of restraint. But that's the same sort of restraint that I talk about when I talk about educated lames and why, and how they don't go into the inner city and deal with many of the problems via force. We got this hands tied behind our back, aspect, right? But anyway, I'm getting way off topic, way off topic. You know how my mind works. It's like a web. But, in terms of valuing each other, right? So going back to what I said about the whole beauty thing, regardless of whether people think black women got worse or got better, the problem is that the whole sexual market is deregulated. Chicks can slide in whoever's DMs, famous, regular dudes. Women are, they're working out now. So even the criteria, the standard for getting a bad bitch is way higher. Like in my last video, and I might post it because I spent enough energy and time making a video, but I talked about how, you got Dodge Charger Hellcats out here pumping 700 horsepower. That was unheard of in the 90s. In the 90s, you were lucky if you had a vehicle that had 200 horsepower. That was considered a lot. But in 2021, pretty much most vehicles come standard with 330 horsepower if they got a V6 naturally aspirated engine, right? And so the supercars, they don't seem as super anymore. Like when you got a Hellcat that's got 700 horsepower and you got a Ferrari that's got 650, that 650 just doesn't mean what it meant back in, the 90s, right? It doesn't mean the same thing. And so, the quiet as is kept, the cars that they're putting out today, your regular sedans today are pushing what would have been considered supercar numbers back in the 70s or back in the 80s, right? I talked about, the iPhone and how the iPhone, changed the game on cell phones. And now every cell phone has a touchscreen. Before that, it was the Razr. And before that, it was the Nokia. Right. And so in terms of the way that women are, due to social media, working out, going to the gym, that's what black men are, comparing. Now, does that mean that there isn't, the undertones of self-hate and colorism in the background? No, it doesn't mean that none of that stuff exists. You know what I mean? But, there's a lot of sisters that they want to ignore all of that. right? And so we have this lack of value due to, many things, and lack of media promotion in black women, because they got all these forces working against them. What went from, a 2-lane highway is now a 6-lane, highway. And there's just, men just feel that they have, and many more options. They don't have to deal. I mean, this is basically just complete deregulation of the sexual market. People don't have monopolies anymore. People are going where they're celebrated, not tolerated, right? If I'm a thick ass white girl, you know what I mean? I'm not going to go. Why am I going to go over to, why am I going to stay in the white community and have some white boys tell me I'm fat? Right? I'm going to go over and get with the black guys or the Hispanic guys that are, singing my high praises. I mean, this is what many of the, skinny straight up and down sisters are saying, that, I mean, they're more, inclined. Their body, shape is more inclined with what a lot of white men are attracted to. So it's like, go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. Same with Asian women that are on the thicker side. They got all type of social media accounts and everything where, they're, you got, I mean, just again, the deregulation of the sexual market. It's got some thick ass chick in Japan that can post a picture of her workouts on Instagram and have nothing but a bunch of urban black men drooling and oogling over her page. She don't even speak English. I mean, this is total deregulation of the sexual market, and to a great degree, there's black women are kind of like they haven't caught up with the times. Now, them not catching up with the times, and here's the question I have for sisters, okay? And now the Chev Charday woman, she kind of spoke to this, and some other women have spoke to this. I'm pretty sure Six the Goddess has spoke to this, and a number of other women. But there seems to be this attitude, like, well, black men, you don't deserve X, Y, and Z. The issue is who are you to demand anything? You're just a black man, right? Who are you, to say that I should look a certain way, or I should this, or I should that? And I've tried to like get around that, but that's grounds to walk away. It is grounds to walk away, because nobody's going to go for that. That's just the reality of it. Cap, I remember when he told me a story a long time ago when he was trying to get a Dodge Stealth. Now, I don't know if y'all know about the Dodge Stealth, but the Dodge Stealth in 1991 and like 1994, that shit was fire. You know what I mean? And then you had like the Nissan, what was that shit? The Nissan 3000, I think it was like the 3000Z or some shit like that. That was another, that, I mean, if you had that, you were just the shit. You were just the shit. I mean, that was the, what was it called? Let me make sure I'm saying the car right. Nissan, what was it? 3000, what was that car called? 3000 GT, is that what it was? Yeah, if you had the 3000, the 3000 GT, but that was like in 1999. Wasn't there one before that? Wasn't there one in like 95? Anyway, y'all know what, some of y'all car gurus, you know what I'm talking about. Wait, is this 1995 3000 GT? Yeah. So it had to be the 3000 GT I'm talking about. So it was the Dodge Avenger. No, not the Dodge Avenger. The Dodge Stealth, or Mitsubishi 3000 GT. It's Mitsubishi. It's not Nissan. I thought it was Nissan. Yeah, the Nissan. Did it? Anyway, I'm trying to think if Nissan had one. I'm almost sure. 300ZX, is that what it was? What is this? Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. The Nissan 300ZX. I mean, that car is still fire. It's still fuego. I mean, and even the back, the lights on the back. Oh my God, yeah. Nissan 300ZX. I mean, man, mid 90s, like you couldn't have a better car. Like, I mean, you want to talk about shit that would make the bitches just. But anyway, That's before many of y'all time. Nissan 300ZX. That was the shit. I mean, that shit just it was as close to a supercar for a regular dude as you could possibly get. It was shitting on the Mustang and all the other cars that they were coming out with. It was just, I mean, that was like the Japanese car to have. But anyway, getting way off topic. Um Damn, see, I lost my train of thought. See, that's why I hate when I go on my little diatribes and whatnot. But no, I remember. So Cat was buying the Dodge Stealth, and he went in there and he wanted the V8, and they were trying to sell him the V6. He was like, I don't want the V6, I want the V8. You know what I mean? They were like, oh well, your credit, da 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 da. He was like, so you're not gonna put me in the V8? He's like, oh well, your credit. And then Cat was like, all right, well, I'll see you next year. And like a year later to the day, Cap came back in the dealership, but I think the thing was like they didn't have what he wanted. Like he was hell bent on the V8, and that's kind of like how how black men are. Like it's like chick, I want what I want. You're not going to come in here and convince me that I want something else that I don't want. But what it looks like is while all these sisters are running around screaming self-hate and all this other shit, what it really looks like is sister's attitude is just black men, you're just a black man. Who are you to demand X, Y, and Z? Now the thing that I've always not understood about sisters, and it really explains the disparity in the bitching. Right, like, so black men, they try to defend themselves in their position, jumping over the fence. Sometimes they can get disrespectful with it and just, shit on black women. Oh, I'm over here, and this is better, and they're trying to get back at women that maybe they wanted, and they didn't get them, and they dissed them and everything, and so they try to use, which is fucked up. They'll try to use the fact that society says the white woman is better anyway. And then they'll try to use that as, well, I got with a white woman, so middle fingers to you. And black women will do the same thing. If some black man disses them, and they'll try to go off and get with a white man and claim that, well, the white man's better than you, even though they're not even really fully attracted to the white man. See, the thing is like, there's a lot of sisters, they are attracted to black men. There's no qualms about it. Black men don't have any doubts that black women are physically attracted to them. Where is the problem? The problem is once you get into discussions about leadership and following and patriarchy, that's where black women do not value black men. That's where the problems come in. So there's a lack of value when it comes to black male leadership. And I don't entirely blame sisters for that, because it's not like black men have this kick-ass track record of marvelous achievements. Right. But this whole notion that, I'm attracted to you. You don't deserve X, Y, and Z because, you all haven't won a race war, but you should choose me and then sell your manhood at a discount because I ain't submitting to shit. Like, I'm like, look, that ain't going to happen. Like, that's where the problem comes in. And then on top of the fact, on the other end, on black men's end, they're running around not valuing black women's beauty, but then it's not helped by the fact that you got these white chicks out here that have evolved and shit. That they're out there, in the gym. Like I was talking to a white man in the gym just the other day. It was a real interesting conversation because he actually has an adopted black son. I didn't know this. You ever have white people kind of like hover around you, and it's like you can kind of feel like they're trying to make a connection to you and you can't figure out why. And then you come to find out like, oh, my son-in-law is black, and maybe you could help me better understand him. And you're like, what, huh? You know what I mean? Well, anyway, he had an adopted black child. So we got to, we were talking about race and stuff like that, and I was trying to, getting him to understand certain things because his son said to him, Daddy, why can't I be white like you? And I was like, ooh, and he didn't really know how to handle that, and so he's really like, perplexed, right? Loves him to death, but he's perplexed. So we have conversations, but before we got onto that conversation, we were talking about women these days working out. And I was breaking down and explaining to him, I was like, it has a lot to do with social media. Because there's a lot of comparing going on. I was like, social media, deregulation of the sexual market, and I'm like, everybody's comparing. So it's a visual platform. And so people compare, oh, well, how do I look like her? How do I get like this? How do I get like it? So they want the bodies of what the women that they're seeing and the clothes that they're wearing and how great they look. And then they see the reaction of the men and the comments in the comment section. They want that. So how do I get that? I go to the gym, I work out. Right? That's what today's white women are on. And that was funny because he said, this is his words. He was like, yeah, back in my day, he was like, women, he's like, they're squatting now. He's like, they're squatting now. And that's one of the key things that even I recognize, because I remember, when I first started working out, in my early 20s, every time I would try to convince a chick to go to the gym, they would be like, no, you're going to get so big, you're going to get muscular and everything. I'm like, you don't have the testosterone to get big like a man. But it looks hella good when, women have, a little, some muscle, some tone to them. I like that shit. Some other people, they don't like that shit. I personally like that shit. Like the fitness, the criteria for me is it's just there. But I think it's there for a lot of men who work out. You can really appreciate it. Like when you see, guys up there like Simeon Panda, and he's up there with his girlfriend that's working out. You see, Odom Beckham, and he's with his, white girl, Lola, or whatever her name is, and she's over there and she's working out. I mean, she got a whole channel. She got like 1.5 million subscribers, and all she does is just workout videos. This is where we are, culturally speaking, in terms of, America. And the only person that's essentially not in the room, are black women. Not to the degree and not to the mass that everybody else is in the room. They're just not. Now, they could argue for whatever reason. They'll try to throw up the exceptions. They'll be like, oh, well, what about Brandy Fit? And what about this black female guru fitness person? And what about her? Like, but it's like it's like black women don't have a reputation for that. They just don't have a reputation. And then you get on, these shows, whether it's Kevin, the women, what did he do? A show about smiling, and, the attitude is like, well, why should I smile for you? Again, who are you to make a demand? You're just a black man. And again, black men have that same sort of attitude when it comes to black women's beauty. You know what I mean? Well, chick, who are you? I got options. I can go over here. I can go over there. I can swirl it up. I could interracially date. I could this, I could that. And these women look better than you anyway, right? Which, I like the messed up part is, like a lot of these women do objectively look better than black women, but it's because black women won't put in the work that they're putting in. You know what I mean? Like, it automatically goes to like some self-hate bullshit, but I'm like, nah, like, how am I supposed to compare you? You ain't never been in the gym. You know what I mean? Like the type of women that go up on the grapevine. You know what I mean? Those aren't fitness chicks, but then, you go over and then you got, these women that, like, how do I want to say it? It's just like what I said about the supercars and versus, the Dodge Charger and the Hellcat and the Scat Pack and the SRT and everything. The game has been stepped up. Back in the day, and I said this in the other video, and might end up not posting that video now, but I'm saying, as I said in the other video, like, you had to be somebody to get a bad bitch. Like, if you go back and you really look at a lot of the women, like even like look at like groups like Vanity Six and everything. None of those women worked out, but they were hot back then. But if you took all the female celebrities that you could think of from the 80s and how hot they were and how sexy they were and whatnot, none of them worked out. And if you implanted them into 2021, nobody would be looking at them. Because now, we don't want to see just, fucking, what was that woman that Michael Jackson took to the Emmys or something like that? What was it? Was it something Brooks? What was her name? I forget her damn name, but y'all know who I'm talking about. Anyway, I mean, I'm just saying there was a whole bunch of white women in the 80s that were just, you want to talk about SpongeBob SquarePants. You know what I mean? You want to talk about just square, flat, as Statuesque One used to say, it's flat at the top. Yeah, you want to talk about flat at the top? Oh yeah, you know what I mean. But then came the, Sir Mix-a-Lot. I like big butts and I cannot lie. And then now, I mean, these women are making asses. I cannot express that enough. How much they're making asses. They're putting muscle to it. And like I said, a lot of sisters, they're blessed. They got it naturally. But, I mean, how do you think it's going to be compared? You got this sister, she got it naturally. She don't go to the gym at all. And then you got Becky over here who doesn't or didn't really have the shape, but now all of a sudden, her shit is like hellified. You know what I mean? And some of these white women, that you'll see, they're average. Like they're average in the face, but they're putting in the work. She might be a 6 in the face, a 5.5 in the face, but then the body, is like a 8. You know what I mean? Or it's like a 7.5, but it would really, if she didn't work out at all, it would be like a 4. But because she works out, she like bumped it up to like a 7.8. You know what I'm saying? Like she's getting close to the 8 territory, even though you could see that at the end of the day, like, I don't know, maybe she got some janky white girl hips or, some other disproportionate shit. Or, not just white women. You could throw other women in here, but I'm saying the majority of America is white. Majority of these interracial relationships black men are having are with white women. But you could throw in the expanded light skin universe and any other group, Asian women or whatever, or, whatever other small minority of women, that are non-white and non-black that black men are dealing with. I'm just saying there's a complete total deregulation of the sexual market. Like even with the white guy, I was talking to him and I was talking about, and I was like, why people don't like interracial relationships? And he said, why? I was like, because they don't know where the wealth is going to go. You have a mixed child. What if you got a daughter and what if she got with a black guy and, you wanted to leave resources to your family, to, your grandchild. And let's say your biracial grandchild identifies more with the black community. And he's interested in black women. Where are your resources going to go? To the black community. A lot of groups don't want that. So that's why they frown upon. Even interreligiously, they don't want that. So these are the type of things that people think about when it comes to tribalism and depending on how involved they are in their community. But one of the things I pointed out to him, I was like, it's not like the 1960s. It's not like, Lovings versus Virginia, where people, if somebody wanted to get at somebody, they had to be, at a particular place or at a particular event and risk not bumping into them and not seeing them. Before it's like, you go back in the day, if you wanted to prevent two people from linking up with each other, you got the black side of a town, you got the white side of a town. Right. But now, you tell me how some of these dads are going to keep their daughters away from Jamal if they're interested in Jamal, and Jamal has social media and Rebecca, she's sitting in her little princess room, with all, her ripped up magazine covers taped to the walls and shit like that. And she's sitting there texting Jamal, and sliding in his DMs like, oh my God, I like your hoodie that you were wearing today. Like, that's what's going on now. It's like dudes don't have to go out here and seek anything. They don't got to chase anything. Chicks are sliding in DMs. I had a man the other day. He was showing me his Bumble. He was like, oh, nigga, man, you gotta get on Bumble, man. Bumble, man. And I had another dude, man, you gotta get on Hinge. Man, you gotta get on Hinge, right? And I mean, he had like 50 just replies, he was just scrolling through the shit. He's like, look at all these chicks trying to holler, man, trying to slide in your boys' DMs, And so, it's like, women, they want to pretend like, that, I guess that's Bumble, but they want to pretend like, they're not out here, and he chased me, like they want to pretend like, look, it's the middle of freaking COVID. You got a lot of desperate women out here, a lot of lonely, clubs have been closed. Women haven't been able to show off. They're not getting validation like they used to. You know what I'm saying? Like there's women like they're going through it right now. And so, again, the sexual markets are open and completely deregulated. And then on the side, you got to sit there and argue with a sister about, submission, being cooperative, smiling, and then their attitude is, you're just a black man. One thing I'll say about black men, even those, the ones that are colorist, like when they don't value black women, they don't value black women across the board. There's no one or one or the other, right? The only incidents where I could say, because there's a problem with these people who will deal with other people, but they expect you to give something up at a discount. Like the women, they'll go and they'll deal with a black man, and then they'll be like, yeah, I'm attracted to black men, but when it comes to your leadership, you got to sell me your manhood at a discount. And you'll have black men who are like, yeah, I don't value black women, but she got a fat ass though, and then they'll still go off and mess with her, but they don't really value her, and that's another problem, right? But what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something about it was the deregulated sexual market. Hold on a second, it'll come to me. Oh, I remember. Yeah, so when brothers are done with sisters, they're wholesale done. And that's why I think, you have this gross imbalance in terms of a lot of the complaints. Where sisters, yeah, they're physically, sexually attracted to you. But when it comes to that whole leadership component, that's where everything falls apart with sisters. And then they'll still try to somehow shame black men. Black men are beneath us, but we want them to want us. And we also want first right to refusal. So, they don't reject us, we reject them, because if they reject us, that hurts our self-esteem. Right. There's reasons why a lot of brothers are out here arrogant. It is an imbalance in terms of physically. Even your girl who swirls, she wrote in her book, talking about fantasizing about Nelly chasing her around, the bedroom naked. Nelly. And then think about who she married. You see what I'm saying? And in another article, she wrote about, her attraction to 50 Cent. 50 Cent and her husband are complete opposite ends of the spectrum. You see? So, it's these sort of things, in terms of, black women being attracted to black men. That's without question. I'm not saying every single black woman prefers a black man. You got black women that they're interested in other races of men. I know, because I went to school with them, especially in the burbs. But the point that I'm making is, that you have a lot of black women that, the thing is when black men don't want to deal with black women, their self-hate looks complete, or what's rooted in self-hatred looks complete, right? Where with black women, yeah, they may desire a black man physically, and everybody can see that, but when it comes to what they really think about black men and their leadership and manhood and all that other stuff, they don't like that. And nobody associates that with inferiority complex. Nobody associates that with self-hate, right? So if you don't like a black woman's looks, it's self-hate. But if a black woman doesn't like the idea of a black man leading her or following his leadership or patriarchy or whatever, that's not self-hate. The way that she's sitting there looking at, well, I will only submit to a white man, that's not self-hate. Let's really look at that. That's not self-hate. It's no different than a black man that says, I only find white women beautiful and I don't find black women, attractive at all. It's in the same vein. It just never it's never discussed like that, because black women will come through a lot of times with shaming language and we're loyal and we're supportive and one-sided loyalty is for suckers, right? They'll come and they'll say that. But as soon as you get into leadership, you know, cooperation, following his lead and all that other stuff. Even if the dude is doing the damn thing, it's still resistance. You know, these women are calling in Kevin Samuel's show. They're talking about Kevin set the bar high. That was another thing that he did that I mean really eliminated the bullshit, because that was always where Cap was trying to get to. He was like, because his whole position was like, what he didn't know is he thought that, like, because there was another video that I did because Cap had responded to me, and and I just read what he wrote, but in summary, what he said was, what he thought when it came to black women and their attitudes is that the attitudes was a self-defense mechanism against some of the fucked up dudes in the community. Right, that it's a hostile environment. Women have to be hostile. But what Cap didn't understand is that it didn't stop once you were 50% of a good relationship. Let me say that again: 50% of a good relationship, and you were still getting attitude as a black man. That's the part that he didn't understand. He figured like, oh, I thought this, I'm figuring you were this way because you gotta fend these guys off that just ain't about shit. But once you found a man that was decent and you got in a relationship with him, that all that attitude would disappear. But it doesn't disappear, because you have many black women who feel like it's in their DNA and it's in their essence, and their Earth Mother, Goddess, High Priestess. It's like interwoven in their culture as black women. And see, this goes back to what I said over a decade ago about how I felt that black women had their own culture that was unique and distinct and different from black men. I mean, it's like, black men always get hit with the coon bat, but the reality is black men, how do I put this? There's I don't know, there's like an extremeness to black women that I can and can't understand. It's one of the reasons why, black men seemingly can navigate the world better. But, I would argue that, the world, especially Western white society, they have this love-hate relationship with black women, almost in the same vein as what I'm talking about how you can value somebody one way but not value them another way. Oh, they love black men, sports and entertainment and everything else, but then the media goes out of their way to criminalize black men at the same time. They love black celebrities, they love black entertainment, they love black, comedy, all that stuff. But then, at the same time, just criminalize the shit out of black men. Right. But with black women, and I guess it does the same thing, because, they big up black women as, oh, you're so educated and you're so smart and you're this, that, and the third, and then turn right around and then throw black women underneath the bus. Oh, you could never compare to our beautiful white women. You just ain't shit, and then show them in a negative light, sweet Betty Brown, oh, Lord Jesus, there's a fire, and some toothless, homeless black woman and shit. Or, go up and, make, hair jokes and stuff like that. Right. So there's like this love-hate relationship. But I think that it's not even, I wouldn't really call it a love-hate relationship. It's just a way to divide and conquer, in my opinion. Yeah, we'll just reverse the genders. We'll make black men the desirable sex gods, and then we'll take black women and we'll make them strong, independent women and whatnot. And where women want to be validated for their beauty, but we're not going to give them that. And men want to be valued for their productivity, but we're not going to give them that. And so, that right off top is going to create animosity. A lot of times black people turning in on themselves, not recognizing where these reversed ideas are coming from and being reinforced. You see, but a lot of black women over the years, especially with the introduction of feminism into the black community, I mean, they've really drank the Kool-Aid on that. On believing that, they are, just these divine supreme beings, and that, black men are just beneath them, and that we are supposed to orient ourselves to follow black women as opposed to the other way around. Right. And then you have all this, the subcultures in the background due to poverty and street culture. And then, the same black woman who, sees herself as the high priestess, she will gravitate towards, the street dude, usually because he speaks to the rebellious nature that's already in her. Right? Not that she's ever going to follow him. Shit, everything he does is illegal anyway. Right? But in terms of his aggression and his physicality, she's attracted to that. But again, you start talking about, him being in charge and whatnot, she doesn't believe in that. And then not only that, he doesn't have the credentials. And then when she comes across a man that has the credentials, she makes the argument that, he has the wrong orientation and that what he's trying to do is Eurocentric and he's trying to imitate a white man. Then when the white man is acting like the stereotypical white man, or the concept or idea that black people have basically elevated the white man to, which is basically God status. And then when the white man is doing what he's supposed to do, then all of a sudden it's that's appropriate for him, but it's not appropriate for a black man, even when a black man is actively doing it. It's like the joke that Cap and I used to make all the time. It's like, you'll have a black man, he's standing there with the NASCAR and the NASCAR helmet and the NASCAR suit, got all the decals and all the badges, and it says Sunoco and it says Exxon Mobil and it says all this shit, I don't know, you name it, right? All these brands on his jacket, and the black woman will walk up and be like, do you know how to drive? Like, bitch, do you not see me in the NASCAR helmet and the NASCAR jacket and the NASCAR car? Do you not see me? Why would I be wearing all this if I didn't know how to drive? You know what I mean? But see, again, where at their core, and these sort of ideas, these sort of bell hooks ideas, that the black women have been, oppressed by the evil black male patriarchy and all this other stuff. And, all these ideas of the color purple and all that, that just, reinforces, this sort of behaviors that, what many black women don't realize, black men have grown up hating. We hate it, which again contributes to that, that 6-lane highway that I was talking about, where, with this whole expansion, of brothers feeling like they have options and whatnot. You got the deregulation of the sexual market. You have, white women out here evolving and working out, and, in terms of the body types that black men are, typically, prone to, being interested in. Like, the white girls are like, they're there. And then not only that, they're surpassing black women in many regards. Many black women have slept on the wheel in that regards. Then you have the lack of cooperation, when it comes to, sisters and the wrong orientation. And then what was the point that I just made? There was a point that I just made. Hold on a second. I forget. But anyway, like I was saying, there's just so many lanes that have been added, and black women are still thinking it's just this 2-lane road, and they have their belief system that a group of men that I think are beneath me, I'm only physically attracted to them. I don't believe that they can accomplish or do anything. Y'all remember the 22-year-old black woman at the time? She was like, a black man can't do anything without the strength of a black woman. And that used to always perplex me. I'm like, okay, fine. If that's how you feel, then why do you trip out anytime a black man is dating outside of the race? You already think that they ain't shit. You already think that they're beneath you. What do you think? It's some sort of consolation? But despite all of that, I'm still attracted to you. You know what I mean? Despite the fact that I think that you are weak and pathetic and cowardly and can't do anything for me. Despite all of that, I still want to give you some of these some of this overweight coochie, right? Despite all of that, I will still allow you to, take care of a child that's not yours, that I had with a man that I also believed wasn't shit, but I let him bust up all up inside me and give me these babies. But despite all of that, you should feel special for me allowing you to be in my presence. Right? Just hit him with the Jay-Z. My presence is charity. You should feel lucky and fortunate. Right? That's how they look at it. Just completely ignoring the total deregulation of the sexual market. Now, I'm not saying or suggesting that, every brother is out here and they're able to date out and everything. No, other communities are intact. If you're gonna be one of the ones that are gonna be able to move around, having resources is a standard. It's a staple over in other communities. So the brothers that have resources are the ones that can, they can go over this. But this also contributes to why you have a lot of black women who don't want black men to have resources. Because if they have resources, they have options. And if they have options, it's like, oh, well, I don't want them bringing those demands back over here. Because, again, the black man is beneath me. He doesn't deserve X, Y, and Z. But I'm going to force him to buy this V6 that he doesn't want when he wants the V8. So... these are the things that, I think, get overlooked. Now, like I said, the lack of value in black women, there is an objectivity to it, in terms of again, what black women are unwilling to do versus what black men feel they can get, elsewhere. And then you also have, again, this sort of matriarchal, these matriarchal belief systems that are so prevalent in the black community. Like I said, a lot of black women really underestimate just how much their sons couldn't stand it. And it's kind of messed up because, when you have a woman who's raised in a household with the absence of a father, right? The only thing that really comes up is, the neglect, the abandonment. And I'm not saying that doesn't have its own detrimental impact on, a child, especially a black female child, but it also has a detrimental impact on, black males and, black male sons. But in terms of seeing how the father who's not there, seeing how he operates, nobody gets to see that. Nobody gets to talk about what they didn't like about what their father did. I can tell you that my mother, there were certain things that she didn't like about how tyrannical my grandfather was. Okay, so my mother went on even though she came from an intact home, she was on some, I don't want to be controlled by a man. And then what did she do? She married a man who was my father, who came from a single mothered home in the inner city. You know what I mean? So, people want to wonder why I look at my mother with a side eye. I'm like, oh, and I'm like, notice the situation she had to get into so that she could not be controlled by a man. So I'm like, so let me get this right. So you had a mother and a father. Yeah, my grandfather, he was controlling, but he was holding it down. Yes, my grandfather had a chip on his shoulder and he was on some, ain't no white man better than me. I'm going to be able to provide for my family just like a white man. And what's crazy is like, to a degree, it's like there's women who would slam my grandfather for that. He was just trying to be an imitation white man. And I'm like, well, in his imitation white man-ness, he was holding down a family and had full medical and dental. And my mother, was taken care of like a little princess. And to like shit on that is just insane to me sometimes. It reminds me of the people who, they feel like, people shouldn't be making $15 an hour and the unions are the problem. And that's why we have to eliminate unions, because employers can't pay employees that much and be competitive in the marketplace. I get what you're saying, but it was that same unionized job that your dad worked that afforded you the luxury or the ability to go to the university and college you went to get the college degree that you got. So it doesn't make any sense to shit on the very foundation that made you who you are. I see this with the LGBT community. You know what I mean? They be coming out of these intact, heteronormative, cisgendered families and then turn around and act like that's the bane of their existence. And I'm like, but you got all the support that you got because you came because of a heteronormative, cisgendered household. And I'm saying, and the black community is broken because we don't have enough of these intact households. And then here you come in with your gay shit trying to dismantle all that. I'm like, oh, fucking brilliant. Brilliant. You know what I mean? So, like, I just don't get people, you know, who like, okay, you want to be on whatever shit you're on, go off and do that. You know, but recognize the value that is still here. Like, stop throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But yet you get people, that's what they want to do. Just throw it all out. I'm like, all of it? All of it? I'm like, you can say what you want about, you know, my grandfather, but I'm like, he was holding it down. I don't know. I'm like, this is insane. And so in order for my mother to be with a man that couldn't control her, what did she do? She went and got with a black man from the inner city who came from poverty, who came from a single mothered home, and whose father, you know, died. So when my mother got married to, you know, my father, like, his dad wasn't there at the wedding because he was dead. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, my dad had a lot of problems, and, you know, it's only come out, you know, in the last couple of years that, you know, these were concerns that my grandparents on my mother's side had, my grandmother and my grandfather. They had concerns, you know, about, you know, the type of family that my mother was marrying into. You see? So, you know, I'm just saying, you know, my mother didn't like, you know, all the aspects of the household. I'm not going to sit there and say that my mother didn't appreciate her upbringing. I'm just saying, you know, she didn't do all the calculations on, you know, what happens when you go out there and you get with a subordinate man because you don't want to be in control, and then you have sons. She didn't factor that in. You know what I mean? So whatever deficits I have are a direct result of, you know, my mother, you know, making the choice in the husband, you know, that she chose being my father. Now, arguably, somebody could say, well, what about your grandfather? Some of the things that he did that she didn't like. I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what they were. And I don't know if they were enough to warrant the type of decision that she made. I'm just saying, you know, you got a bunch of women out here that got, you know, they complain about the broken community and black men are weak, but then it's like the choices that they make in the fathers that they, you know, the men that they, you know, have, you know, will father children with, you know, don't have what they need to make strong sons that can go out here and compete in the economic marketplaces against other groups so that the black community looks like Wakanda and it doesn't look like, you know, Soweto, South Africa. But yeah, you know, a lot of women, they do not consider the fact that your sons are watching you, and a lot of them do not like the type of stuff that you do. And one of the things that Kat pointed out is one of the bigger issues is the fact that women do not understand male hierarchies. And so when women try to, you know, justify their leadership or justify their position, you know, based on intrinsics, a lot of times they don't understand how confusing that is for the son, because the world of men has a different hierarchical system. You know what I mean? In terms of why and how people are respected, you know, because in the male world, there is always the threat of violence. You know what I mean? Yeah, the guy who's bigger is going to get more respect on average than the guy who's smaller, because his big size, they recognize the type of damage that he can do from a physical standpoint. This is why you have guys, you know, who go to the gym and work out and everything else to try to increase their presence amongst other men. You know, I go around and I go to the gym, you know, and I mean, in terms of either what I'm lifting or just my size, Like there's dudes that just gonna give me respect off top, just off top. Don't street dudes, lames, even white guys that may even have racial biases against black men. You know what I mean? There's still a manhood respect. I can see a white supremacist. He can have swastikas on him and everything, and he's looking like Wes from GP Penitentiary, and I'm gonna sit there and be like, that's a big motherfucker. Can't take nothing away from him. Like, he's still gonna get my respect as a big muscular man, despite the fact that he's a white supremacist. I gotta respect it because I gotta recognize, I'm like, hey, he could do some damage. You know what I mean? I might want to tread lightly, in terms of, us dealing and interacting with each other, because it's not going to be an easy, oh, I don't like who he is because he's a white supremacist and I'm just going to get into him. Not if he's looking like GP Penitentiary. I mean, this is why you got all these young boys out here shooting all the time, because they're too afraid to lose a fight. Because a lot of them running around looking like the old Wiz Khalifa and all skinny and bird chested and everything else like that. You see? So, that's why they immediately go to the gunplay. You see, but, a lot of you all do not consider how much your sons, they do not like a lot of the stuff that you do, the controlling ways in which you are, the manipulative ways in which you are. And then they go out here and they deal with other groups of women, and, they're not dealing with that. You know what I mean? When your sons are telling you, and I've said this before, like, these women, they come on and they were like, and my son's not going to be self-hating like you, SWP. I was getting attacked. Left and right, I was getting attacked. And now, it's been 10 years. So many of those women whose sons were already 10 years old when I first came online, they're in their 20s now. And you got black women that are feeling some type of way because their sons are now talking about, I'm not interested in dating sisters. I'm like, told you it was going to happen. What'd you think? We were making it up 10 years ago in the 2010s. You thought we were making it up, what we were saying? And now their sons are online saying the exact same thing. There's something to it. It's not just some shit that sisters can just easily, self-hate. I'm like, okay. Yeah, I'm like, y'all gonna do that for another 10 years? Like, you want to just keep self-hate, dismissing it? Is that what you want to keep doing? So, yeah. I mean, it's just it's bad out here. In terms of black men and black women, we do not see eye to eye. I still feel the same way I felt, years ago. I'm like, black men and black women have a different culture. Black women don't seem to realize that, but it's true. I'm telling you, we got a complete different culture. Again, the way that the women want things to be. I don't know who told them. You know what I mean? I mean, I guess, they would have their own culture if they're operating in a world in their own minds, where they really believe that, they are the center, of black life and black existence. And that the problem is that, our men are just infected, with the media, and they're just brainwashed, and they need to get with this matriarchy over here and subscribe, to this right here. But, we don't respect them. We don't this, we don't that, and they really think that's the natural order of things. In ancient Africa, we were ruling and everything. They get on that, Aisha K. Fane's bullshit. You see? And it's real slick how they'll just use white supremacy to say, oh, well, you shouldn't be acting like this, black man. That's really Eurocentric. And this came from, because, black people got to counter, it's like they got to be anti-white to be pro-black. We got to push back on a lot of the stuff that, white supremacy has inflicted upon black people. But yet black people don't know where to draw the line in terms of what concepts are universal concepts that would operate within the confines of any community and its structure versus those that are poisonous ideas from white supremacy, like, the way that, black women are forced to conform to Eurocentric beauty standards in terms of their hair and things like that. Right. Yeah, that should be rejected. But the idea of male leadership, as a concept, like men being the builders and the maintainers of the physical infrastructure, no, that's universal. That's universal. That's been that way for thousands of years across multiple cultures. But there'll always be that Aisha K. Faines, who try to point to some some ancient African tribe that got conquered 1,000 years ago. Notice what I said, conquered 1,000 years ago, and then say, well, see, they were operating like this, right? Or then you get the other women that are a little bit more clever, and they'll try to claim that, well, see, Africa was conquered underneath patriarchy, and therefore black patriarchy doesn't work, and therefore we should be running shit. Like as though black women have any track record of being effective, right? And then when you look at the conditions of the community, they'll be the first ones to not take responsibility for the conditions of the community. I'm like, black community been a matriarchy. You can go all the way back to the Patrick Moynihan report in 1964. It was already on the decline. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was already full of single mothers. But, and then you got all these other aspects of the subculture. You have all the, the other things that people value that they shouldn't value. Where we don't respect hierarchies. We respect the individual. We don't respect the hierarchy, even if it's a black hierarchy. You know what I mean? Or we get into things like, going back to the rooted in self-hatred, where the Iceman's ice is colder. Where black people won't patronize other black businesses. Even when you go to that Compton, that what's his name? Hey Yankee King, or whatever his name is. I always get his name messed up. I'm terrible with names, aren't I? But anyway, he's got the Compton. Just type in Compton 1970s, and it'll come up. It'll come up at the top of the. It's basically interview. It's a real kick-ass interview. And there's one particular white man in there, who he kind of came in probably with his implicit biases, and I guess he was like a city council member, and he was defending, the black people of Compton, and how, white supremacy will come in there and try to compare, Compton to other communities and everything. And he's like, talking about, that community is like over 100 years old. This community is only such and such many years. I mean, he was breaking the shit down. But one thing in there that, perplexed him is in terms of black business people supporting other black businesses. And he was like, I don't know why they don't do it. He's like, they don't want to support other black businesses. And again, rooted in self-hatred. So, black people as a whole got a lot of things that we have to overcome, and, have to have a come to Hotep moment, right? Not come to white Jesus, come to Hotep, right? We gotta have, one of those sorts of moments. But, unfortunately at this point, it has spilled into, our interpersonal relationship. And it doesn't help the fact that, you have this deregulation of the sexual markets. I mean, it's just completely deregulated. Even, like people, I mean, this is why you have men talking about the sugar daddy thing, and I can be 60 years old and get a 25-year-old. Yeah, there are some 25-year-olds that are looking to be taken care of, and I hope you are prepared for that exchange. Give them money, they'll give you some pootie tang. You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, it is what it is. And so, things like. If you wanted to do something like that back in the day, you had to go to the Playboy Mansion. You had to try to get an invitation to some sort of yacht event. Now, no, nobody has to do that. All they got to do is slide in DMs. Look at all the jokes being made about Bill Gates and Melinda Gates. You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden, everybody, like, I've seen just an insane number of memes, talking about, hey, Melinda, what's good? I heard you recently broke up, come see me, whatever. Right? You know, women are sliding in Bill Gates. Hey, Bill. You know what I mean? This would have never happened before. But now with social media, and now you have these public figures and they got IG accounts and Twitters and everything else. Anybody can get in contact with whoever they want to get with. You can tweet the president of the United States if you freaking want to. You know, hashtag Donald Trump, hashtag Joe Biden, you know, at Joe Biden. I mean, whoever, any congressperson you want to get at, you just put the at sign, bam, there. And then sometimes they'll even respond to it. Or sometimes the media or something, let's say it's so witty and clever, the media catches on to it, and then the media explodes, and then we'll have this nobody who has an exchange on Twitter or on IG or whatever, and they'll make it like public, and then the person will suddenly become famous, and then freaking MSNBC and Fox News are, you know, in their face doing a Zoom call saying, you know, did you ever think that you were going to have Congressman so-and-so respond to your message? And they're a nobody. That's what you're dealing with when you're talking about the deregulated sexual market. So the black women out here, this goes into what brothers have been saying about sisters don't want to compete. Well, the main reason many of them don't want to compete is because you're just a black man. They do not feel that you are good enough to compete for. And quiet is kept before dudes run with that. There's a lot of black men that feel the same way about black women. Oh, man, well, she's just a black woman. I mean, you know, I'm not bending over backwards for that. That's garden variety. I can get that. You know, and then you start talking about the diversityism and dudes wanting to explore out. I mean, they should really be excluded. But I'm saying all of that just simply contributes to, you know, the agony that black women go through by feeling that, you know, nobody's paying attention to them and everything. And it's like, yeah, that is kind of fucked up. Black men are on some abandoning, hey, we're trying out what's over here and this, that, and the third. But I can see both sides of it, right? I can see the objectivity. Like, I'm like, you know, the black guys looking at it like, hey, these women are down, they work out, they look good, you know what I mean? They're cooperative. Hey, I'm going over here. You know what I mean? And the sisters are crying, claiming abandonment. And I'm like, hey, I feel you. That's kind of fucked up because, you know, again, on surface level, you're interested and sexually attracted to black men. No question about that. But then once you get over to the cooperation and doing the things that the men, you know, like about women and everything, like, I ain't doing that. I don't cook. I don't clean. I don't, you know, I'm like, whoa, what? You know what I mean? I don't suck dick. I don't do this. I don't do that. I don't wear heels. I don't wear makeup. That's Eurocentric. Brother, just keep going over. No. Do not feel bad. Do not. I had it wrong. I had it twisted. I thought, you know, it was just you. But now I get it, right? And that's kind of how it plays out. Because you sitting there thinking like, you know, this woman, you know, she's interested in black men and she wants to black love and the black community and everything. And then you come to find out she's on some Aisha K. Faines bullshit. She's on some feminist bullshit. She's on some, you should want me and you should be satisfied with whatever it is I'm serving up and whatever it is I'm giving you. And I'm like, it don't work like that. On top of the fact that, first off, chick, you're a woman. Like, you got to sit there and you got to wait for a man to choose you. You got to wait. Again, you determine who gets sex. Men determine who becomes a wife. Period. So, like, that whole, I'm just standing there with your chest out, acting like, you know, you should just be chosen just off of the strength of blackness alone, and then you ain't trying to do any of the other stuff, just even being pleasant. You know, again, going back to the Kevin Samuels show about, you know, the chick smiling. I'm like, wait, this is a discussion? We're having a discussion about smiles? You know what I'm saying? You know, and again, that's why I put the, you know, the bonnet brigade in that picture with all them sisters that, you know, were going up to the school, where even a black female principal was like, yo, stop coming up here looking like you just rolled out of bed. This is not a good look. Which, again, is why I'm looking at it and I'm questioning I'm like, well, how much does this really have to do with black men? Because a lot of sisters out here, this is how you all present yourself to the world, even when black men are not even in the room. You know what I'm saying? These women got kids. They're going to the school to pick up their kids. What does black man have to do with you going to the school, picking up your kids in a bonnet, an oversized Tupac t-shirt, and some fuzzy flip-flops? You get what I'm saying? Like, how do we get all the way over to, well, black men don't deserve? I'm like, first off, you're a mother, so, dudes ain't sitting around thinking about you, thirsting you and everything else. You already got a kid. You already done committed to some other man or whatever, or you had a baby by some other man. So, dudes ain't really thinking about you like that. But I'm just saying, for your own, your own, like, I don't know, your own, what's the word that I'm looking for? I can't think of what I'm looking for. But I'm just saying your own personhood, I guess. I'm like, damn, man. I'm like, that would be the day, man. I just sit there and be like, man, fuck it. I don't have no girl, man. I'm just gonna lay here in my own filth. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just not going to brush my teeth. I'm just not going to bathe. I'm just not going. That's what gets me about, like cirrhotic patients. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times they're homeless and, they're alcoholics, man. Like, the alcoholics, I mean, I don't know how you could get to a point where, like, you can smell yourself. You know what I mean? Like you look at these people and they're disgusting. Like, their skin is disgusting. Their mouth is just disgusting. They're just, I mean, just like that's literally, if you had to have a word to describe how these people, and especially that's how they sound if they're encephalopathic. But I'm just saying, that's literally how they come off. It's just like, damn, like you just let yourself go. Like, just absolutely let yourself go. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like the smell of cologne. I like, taking a shower and coming out, so fresh and so clean. Like, I'm like, damn, like alcohol took you that much. You know what I'm saying? Or like when you see some of these people on fentanyl and shit like that, I'm like, how do you not see the open sores? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you not see that? You know what I mean? Like, or the boils and shit like that. How do you not see that? Oh, and I love the addicts that just love to lie to your face. You know what I mean? Like, the toxicology report, shows like, positive for methamphetamine, positive for, cannabis, positive for freaking opioids. And then they'll sit there and just straight up lie to your face. So when's the last time you did drugs? Drugs. I never do drugs. I'm like, okay. All right. And so you tell me, how the hell you get a fucking abscess in your muscle? It's injection. You're injecting, like, the fucking lying. Like, I mean, just retarded shit. And then they're like, and then my favorite is I'm so in pain. It's just not working. Oh, do you have any Dilaudid? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, no. The Percocet just doesn't work. I need Dilaudid. That's what I need. I'm like, right. Anyway, I just said it all. I probably won't post the other videos because I didn't really, I focused it. But, yeah, that's all I got to say. That's my video. SWP out.